Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today for my second episode of this video cast slash podcast, Meditation in Art. And I'm here with my very special guest this evening, Thanarat Pui, and I hope I've pronounced that right. We know Thanarat simply as Pui, so that's how she likes to be called. We met, I guess it's a little over a year ago or about a year ago now where we met.
Yeah, I think about a year ago.
About a year ago, right?
I
Yeah.
remember I met you in the meditation class in your life.
Oh, right. Yeah. You were facilitating a retreat, which we'll get a chance to talk about a little bit later. I think that retreat was called, right, I'm Nature, right?
Yeah.
A calling of nature to the inner spirit, which is really a great title, very evocative. And that really kind of leads me to the whole introduction for Pui, because that title is really indicative of everything, well, of a lot of things that Pui has to offer as a facilitator and as an artist. Pui is by profession a movement-based expressive art facilitator. And I'm happy to announce that she's co-facilitating my retreat, or the retreat that we're facilitating together, I should say, on Lovingkindness, July 17th at the New Life Foundation. More about that later, though. Pui has been working as a contemplative facilitator for about 6 years before deciding to work in an addiction recovery center. Amazing work. That's right on the front line there. So good for you. I'm sure you do an incredible job there offering therapeutic art, movement, and mindfulness practices at this addiction recovery center in Chiang Mai. Also offering public courses with both Thai nationals and foreigners, expats, and so forth, like myself. Pui also likes to create a space for participants to reconnect to their inner self. So very similar to meditation, if I might say so, right? Yeah. So we connect to our inner self with Pui through art and movement. And so that's where we're starting tonight. So just a few groundwork questions, I suppose. How did you get interested in art, and primarily art as like a healing modality?
Actually, it's from my own personal experience too that since I started I have to say that I start with my master degree in contemplative education, and from then it's about like some theory, some knowledge that based on like intellectual. So we discuss a lot and we talk a lot about like they still use also with mindfulness and practice. And I'm kind of thinking about myself in some way that sometimes some part of me cannot express fully, especially like with my own feeling and emotion. So then that's why I decide to study more on like therapeutic art. And from that, I realized more that art can help me to understand more with myself. And sometimes art can also like visualize something in me, especially as I say, like movement, emotion or feeling, something that is cannot explain by words. Yeah. So that's why I decide to be interested in the art more.
Mm-hmm. So that non-verbal
Yeah.
communication, yeah, which I don't want to get to the meditation part of our talk too soon, but that's so connected to meditation, right? At least from my perspective, because meditation is nonverbal communication with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so I'd love to hear more about that, and how is it that you find that you can connect with yourself and then express that, because it seems like I always see that process as like a bridge, like crossing a bridge, almost like going internally and then expressing it externally through some art form like that. Yeah. So if you could talk a little bit about that process, that creative process of connecting with an emotion and then expressing that.
Yeah, so the process that I usually use, it's actually it's from like it's called Tamalpa process, and that is what the part that I decide to study more, and is integrate between. For me, I feel like it's integrate between conscious movement, um, expressive movement, which is like a free form movement, and also mindfulness, which is they might not call mindfulness, but for me, when we practice a lot on body, it helps us to return to the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
like naturally. And with that process, I really like that they begin by tuning in with our body first, like they use the different level, like physical level, mental level, emotional level, how you feel in this moment. And from that, then we turn like we shifting to movement to reflect on what we feel at that moment. And then we might continue with the drawing to reflect from movement. So for me, it's quite a holistic way to do this process because it's not just one thing, and especially for those who might not like to it also give them the option to. So for someone they might not feel like connect with movement much, then they have an option to like maybe I connect more with the drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to get into the deep end pretty quick here, so I'm just going to go with that. So one of the uh, one of the aspects of mindfulness meditation or just meditation that I emphasize in my teaching is the technique of feeling an emotion without, because, well, particularly in the West, but I think worldwide nowadays, we have this kind of a misconception that when we have an emotion, let's use an example of anger, because we all have anger sometime. So when anger arises, we feel that we either have to express that, so we yell, kick, punch, scream, shout, discharging that emotion, which doesn't let us feel it, or we repress it. We choke it back in the body. Oh, I'm a spiritual person. I shouldn't get angry. What will they think of me? You know, that kind of behavior, which also causes the body to be ill. So the third option that I generally give when I work with people is just to rest in the emotion as it arises and to be able to feel that emotion. So from what I'm getting from this conversation is you're actually offering another alternative where you can actually express that emotion and feel it at the same time. Uh, that's beautiful. Yeah, can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think with that process, also it's also in my own personal experience, I really agree with what you say that like sometimes it's when there is some kind of really intense emotion comes and people tend to maybe ignore or replace it, but with this kind of artistic way they allow us to accept that it's there but we might not choose to like yelling or do something in the way that it might affect other people or might affect us in some part. But we use it as an inspiration to express through color, through line, or through different kind of shape. And with the body movement, we might like express some voice or some movement, but we do it in a safe space, so people can feel that actually they can feel it. Actually, they can feel the anger. It doesn't need to be repressed.
Mm-hmm.
And to see it clearly as the artwork is help them to accept it easily with this process, I think.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So how did you get, you mentioned your own personal experiences, and you can get as personal or as light as you like with this question, but how did you get started into this career path? What was your first beginning?
It's a really good question. Actually, I think my first, like the first experience or my first story that take me to this journey is since I work completely different, like as an accountant, and from that I kind of face like suffering, not just only the work, but also some other thing in my life too. And I have to say that I become like a depression, and that moment became like my trauma. And since then I asked myself like what I want to like understand more, and I answer myself like, if this is the thing, like if um we cannot ignore the suffering in life, so why don't I learn to be with it in a better way, or why don't I learn to just like be with it. So I decided to study in master degree in contemplative education, as I mentioned. And with that class, it's really like a good combination between self-awareness, theory, activity, self-understanding, self-discovery, and also the foundation of that is mostly about meditation. So from that I practice a lot of meditation, and it's really helped me to be flexible on like the method and the theory too, because I learned to study in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, um, with my own friends, like the friend that I study with, they gather together and we work as a group facilitator and offer the work with university students, with organization, and some companies to create the same space that we have with us. Like for example, we uh, offer the like we have the mostly it's more like activities that they can have a space for them to share their own like their own story, because for sometimes um for example I work with like a nurse student or some career that they tend to um mostly take care of other people. Sometimes they ignore the part that they can take care of themselves. So we learn to have a good listening skill and getting to know themselves a little bit, and have some arts for them to see that one journey of their life. And from that, I think it helps them to have some kind of self-care technique too for themselves. I worked there for like 5 to 6 years until I feel like, as I say, like something missing in me. After I joined one course that is about improvised movement, and I noticed that from that, that is something that is healing in me without talking at all, and that's why I fascinate in that.
Mm,
And from that, I decide to study more in this thing like movement-based expressive art in Tamalpa Institute in US, and it's really like what I just said, that it's a really good combination that they're not just only using art, but also use like psychology, which is like a gestalt therapy that they learn to building body awareness through what ourselves.
mhm,
Yeah, yeah. And from then I work as a movement-based expressive arts facilitator now.
mhm. So that's the start. And so it sounds like to me, anyway, from what I'm hearing from what you say, uh, it sounds like you have a pretty good window into how meditation practices uh, influence and affect the creative process. Uh,
Mhm.
so could you speak a bit about that, and if that happens for you, or maybe you've seen it in people you work with, people who have a meditation practice or your own meditation practice, and does that play a part in your own, either when you're healing or yeah, healing, working with people, or doing art yourself.
Can you explain more about this question? Yeah.
Sure. So for myself, because I used to be a musician and now I'm a writer, I found that, and I still continue to find that meditation uh, allows me to reach a point of silence where I can feel the creative process.
Mm.
And so I find that my meditation practice has a deep influence on my creativity. So wondering if you might have had a similar experience in your teaching or your healing process.
Yeah. Actually, every time that I like start the activities, I always begin with little grounding technique or like mindfulness practice to help them bring awareness to themselves. And I think with that is it's like it's allow them to like be in the present moment and let go of all of like the judgment or and criticize, and also the past and the future and what they worry about. And from that, I think I have to say like mindfulness is a big part of my work too, because I tend to let them or be with their own process. Is more like trust in the process instead of thinking about the goal. So when we do the art or when we do the movement, it's more like focus on here and now, how like when you move like this, how you feel inside your body, or when they use the color, they they learn to be with each color instead of thinking about, oh, I'm going to draw this or that. So yeah, I think that is the part of my process with which is mindfulness is really like a big part of that.
Yeah, yeah, I really resonated with that whole because when I was a musician, I primarily played jazz, and so it was impossible to improvise and have that inner critic going at the same time, you know.
Yeah,
And so many people have that inner critic going as a dialogue in their mind, you know, all of the time, on their way to
yeah,
work, while they're at work, while they're driving home, while they're cooking dinner. Their whole day is back and forth with that inner critic. And so uh, art, movement, and mindfulness practice, I think it has all of that in common, right?
yeah,
But you can't meditate and have the inner critic going at the same time. Some people do, and I think for beginners that happens because it's just habitual, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
but mindfulness is the practice of dropping that, as well as any other thoughts as well. Primarily, at least in my practice, primarily letting that inner critic be quiet. And so I found that to be quite, well, very similar in improvisation of music and when I'm writing. When I'm really in the flow of writing, if that inner critic starts, I stop writing.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done for the day. And then I try to come back the next day. And so, really beautifully said how that that is allowed to be, or it has to be quieted. I think the way you put it is you have to be in the present moment with the color, with the dance, with the movement, and so forth.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you said, like with inner critic, and I think it's when we have that thing, sometimes it blocks us to be more creative or become one with the experience in front of us. So to have the to have the skill, like to know how to deal with that with mindfulness, is help them to know that they have the option to let go of that.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I just want to point out the way you phrased that sentence. It's so beautiful. You said to create or to be at one with it, whatever's in front of us.
yeah,
And that sentence, it shows that how similar that is. That the creative process is to be one with what's in front of us, and to be one with what's in front of us is a creative process. And I find that so often overlooked in meditation practices and in religious organizations and in art communities too. You know, I mean, I went to an art college that wasn't contemplative, and they were very. It was rather fear based, honestly, and it took a long time for me to actually grow out of that. And I see that often in musicians from my world, because that's the world I was relating to for so long. A lot of fear in musicians. Well, hello, welcome back. We are back from our little pause here with my wonderful guest, healer extraordinaire, both in mindfulness modalities and art modalities, and the combination of two. This is Pui. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, Pui and I will be co-facilitating a retreat, a Lovingkindness retreat. Actually, the title of the retreat is called Lovingkindness, a Healing Retreat. And the reason why I put this particular retreat together is because of the whole COVID-19 situation. And I found that a lot of the requests that I was getting from my one-on-one clients were really leaning towards healing. And in particular, I found loving kindness practice to be very, very appropriate for this type of healing that's being sought after. So I put this retreat together. I said, who is the healer that I know? And so I contacted Pui, and she was gracious enough to accept my invitation to come up to the New Life Foundation and help me facilitate this retreat. So with that introduction, that very long-winded introduction, I'll let Pui talk a little bit about some of the offerings that you'll be providing alongside the loving kindness meditations that I'll be guiding.
Yeah, first of all, it's really like a beautiful idea. I really like the way that it's like loving kindness and also the healing retreat. So the part that I will share, I think, with the body and art is kind of like building the awareness through their body. I think that is also the way for them to listen to their body or reconnect to their body. And sometimes we might like do a lot of activities and we might really busy in our life to return to like our body, like our home. It can be the way also for healing. And I think the art part will be a really good part that it can be like the additional part that can be really good with the silent retreat with you too, that they can also reflect to through their own journey, through their own like life. It might not like a really like a long one, but I think it's like enough for them to have a space to them to have a self-reflection through the day and also through their life. So in the morning will be like a body awareness exercise, and then in the evening after the retreat it will be like art or movement activities. Yeah.
And
And
go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, and also on the weekend I'm going to share like like a little bit like a short workshop too. It's called Free the Body. Yeah, which is will be like something that people can express and like rest and relax more with their body and art. Yeah.
So that's the weekend after the retreat, right? So the
Yeah.
retreat, I think, ends on the 24th, which is a
Mhm.
Friday. And then just to tell our listeners here, so the retreat ends on a Friday later in the evening, around 6 in the evening. But then because the New Life Foundation is actually closed due to the COVID-19 restrictions, but we are opening the doors to the New Life just for this retreat and for the retreat participants. So we have the whole campus to ourselves, which is
Yeah.
never really happens in normal day-to-day life. So we're taking that opportunity to offer the New Life grounds to all of the retreat participants to stay for the whole weekend after the retreat, which is a great opportunity. I know when I've done retreats before, and I've been launched out of the retreat back into wherever I was going next, my hometown. Back then it was New York City, which was really tough. But whatever the environment is, you're never really, it's quite an adjustment, I should say, coming out of a retreat, a week-long retreat, and then back into regular life. So we're offering Saturday and Sunday and Friday evening, of course, for the retreat participants to kind of unwind and really process everything that came up and everything that was learned and embraced during the retreat. And I think this offering from Pui is just going to be really a fantastic way of doing all of that. I, of course, will be on the grounds as well, but I'll be doing one-on-one sessions for people who would like more of me after a week, though I don't imagine that will be a selling point. But no, just, you know, if people want to have a conversation about things that came up for them during the retreat, I will be there for that as well. The pool will be open, we'll be having food, and a lot of talking, I imagine, will happen, because after a mostly silent retreat, people do like to have a lot of conversation. So that'll be all available. So I think that's all we wanted to say. So thank you again, Pui, for agreeing to come on the show and for agreeing to co-facilitate with me. I appreciate that. And thank you all, my listeners, for tuning in to episode 2 of Art and Meditation. If there are any artists out there tuning in, please don't be shy. If you're an artist and you have a contemplative practice, send me a message, private message me, or just put a comment underneath the video here, and we'll set up an interview if you'd like to be featured on the show. I'd love to have you. I think that's all I want to say. So stay clean, stay healthy, take your zinc and your vitamin D. If you're into wearing masks, do wear your mask. I have to say, you know, I hate to get political, but in Thailand, everyone wears a mask, and we have no more cases. Just saying, just saying. We haven't had a case in over 3 weeks. Everyone wears a mask. Might be a coincidence. You decide. Okay. On that note, I will see you all later. Thanks again.
Bye.